Welcome back to Hope 2020 to our attendees, our volunteers, and our folks watching all over the world. Welcome back. Our next talk is Social Code to the Human Mind, the Science Behind Social Engineering by Christian McLaughlin, a U.S. Navy veteran, public speaker, and social engineer extraordinaire. Social engineering is one of the hottest talked about topics at conferences around the world. What makes social engineering so popular and why is it so successful? As a reminder to our attendees, the only way you can get asked questions is through the live stream Q&A channel through our exclusive Matrix feed. So please ask questions. We will relay them to the speaker after his presentation. And now, Christian McLaughlin.
Thank you so much. I just want to say it's a great pleasure to be here, and for everybody that's watching at home, I'm glad you all are safe, and I hope you guys have had a great conference so far. Social engineering isn't really something that I can cover in the hour, really 45 minutes that I have with Hope. Some people spend their whole lives dedicated to the study. There's degrees on psychology from the bachelor's all the way up to the doctorate level, and there's whole focuses on just studying the human mind. But my goal really in this talk is to get you interested. I want you to leave knowing at least one interesting, fun thing from this talk. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. I'll start off here. All right. So my name is Christian McLaughlin, as I was introduced. I'm a U.S. Navy veteran, 7 years. I did 2 tours, 3 deployments overseas. I'm now out of the military. I'm a SOC analyst. I do security research. I'm a public speaker, which is funny because it goes right in hand with the social engineering talk. Pen tester, and as always, I am a social engineer. I like to study mostly in the field of macro, so sociology, which is the study of human behavior on a larger scale, so the society level. I'm really interested in how we as a society can be socially manipulated and how we act with each other. So I'll go ahead and get started here. So what is social engineering? Well, it was covered up in the introduction pretty well. It's a hot topic today, really. It is. But it's not necessarily. I'm not going to talk necessarily about what social engineers or how to use it, but I'm really going to talk about how and why it works. Really, we're going to get deep into the science behind it, the psychology, and talk about communication too, and why that's really important. So, as always, myself and anybody at Hope, we don't condone repeating any of these attempts or activities maliciously, unless, of course, you have permission first. So it's important to get permission in writing. I'm going to be talking about a lot of resources too. I pooled a lot of resources, mostly books, for this talk. So if you're into reading, you're going to have a reading list for the rest of the year. If anybody's familiar with Kevin Mitnick, he wrote the book, The Art of Deception, which is an amazing book written years and years ago, but it's still relevant today. So social engineering is human hacking. We target humans, employees, coworkers, families, friends, but not maliciously always. Social engineering has 2 goals. You either want to extract information from your target, or you want your target to perform some kind of function or task for you. They're both very simple but highly targeted forms of psychologic, not manipulation, but that's the word that likes to get used a lot. But we'll talk about why it's not really manipulation. So there's 3 common types of social engineering. There's text-based, which is phishing. It could be emails, it could be text message, really. Vishing, which is done with the voice, like over the phone. And then there's in-person social engineering, usually done with like impersonation, but that's deals with in person. So social engineering aims to exploit 6 flaws that we have as humans when we're engaging with each other. These 6 vulnerabilities, as they would be called, are identified in Robert, I'm going to butcher his name, Cialdini's book, Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion. This is an amazing book. I've read it 2, maybe 3 times. It holds true to this day. So we're going to first talk about the first topic here, which is liking. So liking is, as people, we are more willing to do something for somebody when we like them. The causes of liking could be having something similar in common. I like Star Wars, so if the person who's targeting me likes Star Wars, that's a great way to go at. I'll talk about Star Wars all day. I'll listen to it. It's a great way to get me relaxed. People who compliment us, compliment your shirt, say something nice to you, it catches you off guard. And when we have similar goals that we're working towards is another one helping us. So the one thing that's critical, the difference between like a business approach, which is less successful and beneficial and more professional, is establishing a personal relationship is drastically more successful. If you can get a personal relationship with your target, it's gonna your targets your attacks are gonna work much better. So reciprocity is the next one. This focuses on obligation, but not necessarily, you're not expecting something in return. You're trying to get the person to feel like they owe you something, returning a gift. So the interesting thing about giving gifts is they don't have to be physical. They can be in information. You could be telling a joke to somebody or really a secret, especially if you tell somebody a secret. That's definitely giving a gift, and they'll probably want to give something back. So an interesting study is that in restaurants, people who are given mints, their tips are almost doubled. Or no, the people who give twice as many mints in restaurants, their tips are almost quadrupled actually. So that's interesting to know. Next one is scarcity. So scarcity is a fun one. It has to do with the availability of something. So value and availability are disproportionate, or they're inversely proportional to each other. As the availability of something decreases, its value increases. So we can target people using this technique by saying things like limited edition, exclusive, for a short time only. And this makes us feel like we have to buy this. It's necessary. Even if we don't need it or if we don't want something, make it limited. This is great for social engineering attacks when you give them a time limit and it's running out and they make them feel like they have to do it quickly. Consistency is the next one. So consistency is pretty much the privilege escalation of social engineering. You start small, right? And you constantly ask for more and more, but you want to ask the same person. And a great thing about this is to target a specific person, especially somebody who is at a lower level who doesn't feel important. You make them feel important. You ask them for a small thing like, hey, I don't have a pen or a pencil, and they give it to you. And then maybe an hour or a day later, it turns into, hey, I need the password for this and this. And they're just going to trust you because you've already formed that relationship and you've escalated that privilege up so high. So consensus is the next one. Consensus is when we as humans feel doubt about something, we seek approval through others. If other people are okay with it, we're okay with it. It's just human nature. It's based on actions and behaviors. So we are compelled to follow the general consensus of others. This could mean having the social proofing, but having the social approval of people. But another good way of targeting this is saying that, for example, you're in a bank or you're in your target area, and you're trying to get access to something. You can mention somebody high up who has been approved by the company. I'm here to represent, I'm on here on behalf of the CTO, and they know who the CTO is. So if you're here on behalf of the CTO, it's almost as if he's walking there with you. And speaking of walking with, stepping outside of somebody's office or just being in close proximity with that person could just give you immediate social proof off the bat. Nobody's going to question you. And the last one is authority. I don't like to use authority. Authority is a very hot topic, and it's really the last one we like to use. We don't want to force people to give us information, which is what authority is. But there are also ways to finesse authority. So if you tell somebody that it's critical that something gets done, and if you say, well, if it doesn't get done, that's fine. I'll tell so-and-so, and then, it'll be on you. And what's your name, by the way? That's a good way to get authority. You're scaring them and you're giving them that social proof, but also you're boasting your authority, and you're supposed to be here. With authority, I would be very, very careful about who you try to impersonate. Never try to impersonate federal employees or law enforcement officers. I wouldn't really even go as far as to impersonate any public official with the government. It's not a good idea. So we're going to talk about communication. So the numbers that are on the PowerPoint slide, they're not exact numbers, but they give you a great idea of having a visual of what percentage of communication is important. So 7% communication is verbal, right? About. That's not very much. If I'm vishing somebody, you're telling me that 7% of what I'm trying to communicate is being spread or is being networked across the phone. But the crazy part is that almost or more than half of communication is body language and how I'm acting, what I'm wearing, how I look. That's important. Postures, gestures, breathing, your facial expressions. These are all important. So communication is really more than just what we say. It's how we say things, when, where we say things, how we dress, how we sit, what we do. So we're gonna go over. I'm gonna show a couple pictures here just to give you an idea of understanding communication. So these are a pair of Marines. If you're familiar at all with the military, you know any Marines, you know these guys would much rather be back at the barracks, drinking beer, playing video games. They don't want to be here. They don't look very happy, and they're pretty serious. I wouldn't approach these guys. Plus, they're armed, right? That's a good visual indication. They're wearing uniforms. They're professional. You have so much communication right there on what's being conveyed to you as a message. This is a funny one though. European cops or cops in the UK, they like to have their vehicles and their uniforms are generally reflective because they like to be seen by people. They're communicating, hey, I am here, call me if you need me or point me out. Whereas American cops, they like to have dark vehicles. They like to have undercover vehicles. They're out there trying to catch you speeding, doing crime, or they're really just out there to get you. Now that's just a generalization, and it's meant to be funny. It's not entirely true all across the board. I just want to put that out there. And this is a great one right here. This goes with tip jars. This goes with anything in general. But the open music case, we know what that means. It means I'm performing and put money in here for my performance. And it's crazy that we know what that means, that we as humans would go ahead and just do that. He's not even going to tell you that's what you need to do. So let's talk about the 3 phases of communication. We have perception, evaluation, and transmission. Before we even talk or open our mouths, we perceive the situation. It's a combination of our senses: smelling, seeing, hearing, and really it's our experience. We bring in our experiences to the perception and we formulate conclusions based off of that. When we formulate our conclusions, we then evaluate for value. We need to find value in something, how much we value what's being talked about, how much we value the person that's talking, how much we value the context. And value is really, really important because we're going to be more compelled to communicate when it's something that we care about or that we value. And then there's transmission. That's when we are communicating our thoughts. It can be verbally. It could be shaking our head, nodding. It could be ignoring or looking the other way. So that's super important to understand. And then there's the structure. So think of the structure as you have 2 circles and then you have one big circle that's surrounding them both. You have us, we have the other person or our audience, right? And then we have the context of what's being talked about. So this is important to understand in a conversation with people. Physical communication, as we talked about, is extremely important. Tone, facial expressions, gestures, posture, it's all important. We as humans don't, texting isn't really an effective method of communication, and neither is talking on the phone. We like to be social and we like to talk to each other. I will say something that's really interesting, especially being a millennial myself and observing things as I have. We have adapted as humans to develop ways to communicate and increase that communication that's not being done in person through emojis, emoticons, memes, and gifs. Gifs are super important. If I want to convey that I'm happy, instead of just sending a smiley face, I'm going to look for the perfect gift. It could be somebody raising their hands. It could be somebody like just grinning or smiling in the camera. I'm going to find the perfect gif for exactly how I feel. And I think that's really interesting that we have developed this method of communicating. So why is reading our target important in understanding this whole communication process? We have to understand all aspects of communication as a social engineer because we're hackers. We need to be in control of the conversation. You can't control a conversation if you don't understand the foundation that it's laying on. So that's why we have to understand context. We have to understand our target. We have to understand things that, like what I just spoke about. So uh, this is we need to know as much as we can communicate about communication, such as structure and flow. So now we're going to merge into the next section and talk about the limbic system. I have about 25 minutes or so to talk about this, so I can't get too in depth with the limbic system. There are papers, there are websites, there are whole degrees on this system in the human body. I'm only here to get you intrigued on it. So the limbic system for us is primal. It reacts, it doesn't think. It's not a logical system. There is some logic involved with it, but it's not thoughtful logic. Um, it drives motivation, emotion. It helps with learning and with memory. So nonverbal communication, body language, is reflective of the limbic system in the brain. So this is really the brain's intrusion detection system also, and we'll talk about that later. So a fun fact about the human brain before I go on is ever wonder why the human brain has wrinkles in it? It's because neurons, their processing is increased with the greater surface area. So if you were to take a piece of paper, right, and this is a whole surface area right here, and you were to crumble it up into something really, really small and stick it inside your brain, right, you have not decreased the surface area of this. You have really just effectively made it fit better. And that's why calling somebody smooth brain is an insult. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the hypothalamus, and this deals with homeostasis in the mind. It drives hunger, thirst. It responds to pain, anger, aggression, and sexual behaviors. So why is the hypothalamus super important? Well, we have to understand how we respond to things, and I encourage everybody to look up all these the limbic system after the talk and learn more about it. It's really, really good to know. The hippocampus is the next point I'm going to just touch briefly on. This converts short-term memory into long-term memory. It's important for remembering things. If the hippocampus is damaged in our mind, we fail to make memories. We fail to remember things, but we will remember all of the memories that have happened previously. It's like living in a constant state forever where nothing changes, just like in 51st Dates, which seems like a nice concept, but most people who develop this disorder or have this damage end up going to psychiatric hospitals because of they go insane. And the amygdala is if you know about social engineering, you know about amygdala hijacking. This is a fun one that social engineers like to teach. So this is the emotional center of the brain, and this is what really, really drives motivation. It alarms the body, or the brain, which tells the body of any danger. It trains the brain and associates emotions with triggers, right? So if we as a child remember something that that will scar us, it's the amygdala that's helping form this communication, this connection, and this reacts to it reacts. It remembers things. So we're not thinking when we react. If you, for example, a dog barking, it scares us, right? It makes us frightened. And that's because we as humans, as a species, have been trained to be afraid of dogs. Just even if we like them, it's just an instant, immediate reaction. So this is great for phishing scams. You want to hijack the amygdala, create pleasure, excitement, danger. Respond to this email now. So why is this important? Well, we really pretty much talked and covered about these and why understanding the human brain is important. You have to know the trigger points of your target. You have to understand as a human and as a species the things that trigger us negatively, but also the individual. This is great for pretexting. When you're creating a pretext engagement, it's important to study your target, and this is definitely something to take into consideration. So these are different neurotransmitters and hormones within the body that help facilitate the limbic system and help drive our happiness. So dopamine, for example, it's considered the feel-good hormone. It is a hormone and a neurotransmitter. It helps with learning and memory and motor functions within the body. Serotonin is a hormone and a neurotransmitter also. It helps with mood, sleep, appetite, and memory. Oxytocin, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is called the love hormone, and it's just a hormone. It helps with childbirth and breastfeeding because it's important to create trust and bonding, and also during sex too. This oxytocin is released. So when you're releasing oxytocin, you are creating a chemical bond with whoever you are reacting or whoever you are interacting with. And lastly is endorphins, which are pain relievers to the body. They are produced during stress and discomfort. They help us feel more relaxed, or not really relaxed, but give us this feeling, a few good feeling. And they're also engaged during reward producing activities. So if somebody makes you feel good about yourself, you also produce endorphins. It's important to understand that we seek comfort and safety as human beings. So everything that we do is to make us feel happy inside and to make us feel better about ourselves. Uh, we seek our wants, our needs, desires. We understand our fears, and we pick our preferences. So with that, I want to get into a super interesting topic, which is colors. Colors are really, really important to us, and this section might help some people out a lot. Colors are embedded into our biological mind. Uh, it's just passed down through our DNA and through genetics. So color is a very, very important form of nonverbal communication. It warns us about danger in nature and expresses emotions such as love, rage, and fear. First color up is we have blue. Blue is widely known for relaxation and being calm, but blue in overuse can cause or be concern for depression. And blue would be associated with the sky and the ocean. Uh, Green also is a relaxing color. This represents clear thoughts and vision, and it being relaxing too. Also, it's the earth. Uh, the green and the blue, no surprise why those colors make us feel relaxed. So next up, we have yellow. And yellow, and again, with colors, we have our preferences. Some people might hate blue and green, and some people might like yellow. But as primates or our primal instinct is to react a certain way to some of these colors. So yellow is a symbol of danger. It's irritating. It's also a sign of intelligence, but it warns us. And yellow in excess can cause sensory overload, which is why if you have like autism or you have sensory disorders, yellow can freak you out. So if you have kids with autism and you have yellow everywhere, I would think twice about having that. Red is probably one of the most interesting colors, I think personally. First, it's eye catching. It's the first color that we process in the human mind. It can symbolize power. It can symbolize strength. It can be fierce. So we can be telling people that we are a person to them to be afraid of, or be confident with, or that we're strong, or self-confident. It can also warn us, just like yellow, of danger. So red's probably one of my more interesting colors that I like. And of course, there's some examples of the color red. Black and white are also interesting. So black is a color for power and authority, while white is purity and innocence. And you can see that reflected in the yin yang symbol. So colors are really, really important. When I'm doing job interviews or when I am going out to a social engagement, I do pick my colors pretty carefully. I got the red tie. I also got the blue tie and the blue suit. And I also have the black and white suit if I want to be professional, or just the plain, I got just plain white or just plain black if I want to seem professional, or if I want to seem, docile, innocent. So color is really, really important. Next, we're going to talk about Proximix. So this is also falls in with the human mind, but more or less the way we observe things. Proximix is the study of the use of space and the effects of population density on behavior, communication, and social interaction. The term was coined by Edward T. Hall. So Proximix is we have these defining boundaries here, and we generally, so how a conversation would start is you'd be out in the public space or even farther out, and you might call out to somebody and want to talk with them. Now, if they're in a public space, your conversation is public. You aren't afraid of other people hearing it. If you want to say, hey, come here, you're inviting them into your social space to have a more social conversation. But again, anybody passing by can overhear you. Personal space is something a little bit more closer. You're probably telling somebody something that you don't want to be known public, but you're not really whispering or keeping a secret. And then intimate space is, a secret, or you're trying not to. You're really, really trying not to let other people overhear your conversation. So, as a social engineer, we want to get close to our target. That is the goal. It may seem weird because getting close can be uncomfortable for some people, but really, the brain. If somebody is in your personal space, right, even if they weren't invited in, if done right, it can actually relax you. So for example, let's say I need map directions and I'm going to come up to you. At first, you might, your warning signs are going off, but as the conversation, progresses, maybe after a minute, you're relaxed, you're calm, you don't feel weirded out anymore. And culture really does matter with this. So these are not solid numbers. In some cultures, it's acceptable to be within the personal space of another person. In some cultures, like in America, we like our personal space. We don't want people around us, but it still holds true with getting close to somebody, how it relaxes them. We're going to talk a little bit about the pioneers of emotion before we dive a little bit into facial expressions. So Charles Darwin first studied the on the Galapagos Islands, was the first pioneer of emotion. He studied Darwinism and natural selection and wrote the book, The Expressions of Emotions of Man and Animal. It's an old book. It still holds true, but read it at your own discretion because it's an old book, a different time. And then later we have Paul Ekman. You might not know who Paul Ekman is, but you do know who he is. Paul Ekman, if you've ever seen the TV show Lie to Me, he helped write that, or he helped them with the writing of that show and the guidance. And he also was involved with the show Inside Out. I'm definitely sure if you have kids, you've seen this movie. It is a really great movie about human emotions. So Paul Ekman co-founded Microexpressions in 1967. He traveled to Papua Guinea to study nonverbal communication with 4 people, and he realized that facial expressions are universal, right? This is a population that is separate from society, and their facial expressions are the same. Um, so he came up with the facial action coding system, or FACS, and it took 8 years for him to develop. But in 1978, he ended up developing it, and it's used by leading industries uh, in the world right now. We're going to touch up on the human brain a little bit more and understand the different sides of the brain. So the left side of the brain is more logical. It helps with speech, mathematics, linear, sequential, logical, reality, analytic detail, blah, blah, blah. And when it's damaged, you can have difficulty with speaking, understanding words, and you have very slow and careful movements. Whereas the right side of the brain is holistic, it's random, it's intuitive, it's visual, it's musical, artful, rhythmic, and it's artistic and open-minded. When this side of the brain is damaged, we have difficulty with visual perception, poor decision making, and we're very impulsive, short attention span, and we're slow to learn new things. So let's talk about facial expressions. The eyes, right? So direct contact with the eyes displays interest or attentiveness, but prolonged eye contact can be a threatening gesture. So breaking eye contact periodically is normal, but making direct eye contact with somebody is definitely a good communication behavior. When we break eye contact, though, on cue, for certain things, like if we're being questioned, it can be concealment. It can show that we're discomfortable with something, or we're distracting, or we're distracted from something. Rapid blinking is a symbol of distress or discomfort. Infrequent blinking is a concealment of your emotions, though, otherwise known as poker face. And raising eyebrows displays uncertainty or surprise. The mouth, some interesting things about this. When you purse your lips, it can be a sign of distrust or distaste or disapproval. Lip biting shows stress or anxiety or worrying. Covering the mouth like this is concealment, or you're trying to hide an emotion from somebody. Turning away, turning up, smiling is happiness and optimism, like a really, really big smile. Whereas turning down, it shows sadness and frowning and grimace. Gestures. This is a funny one. The OK symbol. It's crazy how certain gestures have changed over time. This used to be the symbol for OK. This used to be the circle game, and now it's a racist symbol. But gestures evolve over time, and we have to understand that. So some gestures, though, they do hold biological relevance. Like clenching your fist is a symbol of anger or solidarity. You'll see kids do this. They don't even know what this means. Thumbs up is for approval or disapproval, or thumbs down for disapproval. And the V sign is for peace or victory. I don't really, I mean, I guess, yeah, victory if you are champion. I don't know. But gestures are not universal. There's cultural significance with gestures. Just remember that. But generally, as humans, some gestures with the hands will be universal. Arms and legs. When your arms are crossed, it indicates that a person might be defensive or they might be self-protected. But also, this is a very comfortable posture. This might just be done to make us feel comfortable. If we are uncomfortable, we will display comfort-based behaviors. Hands on your hips when somebody's feeling ready or in control or even aggressive. Clasping hands behind your back is a sign of boredom or anxiety or anger. Tapping or fidgeting can show signs of boredom, and crossing your legs is a sign of closing off or privacy. One important thing with hands and hand gestures is when you display your hands, you are showing and communicating with the person that you are not a threat, right? So when somebody can't see your hands, they might not, they in the back of their mind, they might have like a slight off feeling. But if your hands are on the desk or displayed or you show them, people get more comfortable with you. Again, with posture, if you have an open body posture, you're friendly and open. But if it's closed off or hunched or crossed, it can indicate hostility, unfriendliness, or actually, like I said earlier, anxiety. You want to tell someone if they're welcome into a group. So this is an interesting one with body language and the legs. This is one that I heard from Joe Navarro. He told me about this at the Human Hacking Conference this year. When you walk up to a group of people and you want to tell if you are invited into that group, if the person just turns their waist or looks at you, they're acknowledging you. But when they turn their legs and they're opening up the circle for you, they're welcoming you. I've never ever looked at groups of people the same way ever again, learning that. So facial expressions, we'll go ahead and knock these out real quick because there's not much to them. We already understand most of these. As humans, we like to manipulate our face in certain ways, like we mimic behaviors that are fake. So smiling when we're not really supposed to be, like when we're not really happy, we do that to just because we know that facial expressions are important to each other. And also, I want to talk about mimicking gestures. So if you don't understand a gesture, mimic it. This includes facial expressions. This includes body posture. So if biting your lip is a gesture you don't understand, or pursing your lips or crossing your arms, do it. See how it makes you feel, and that's probably why the other person is doing it. So we'll talk about sadness. Sadness is as a emotion of loss, despair, grief, helplessness, disappointment, or sorrow. The inner corner of the lips, and the eyebrows are drawn in and then up. The skin below the eyebrows is triangulated with inner corner up. The jaws and the lips are drawn down. The jaw comes up, but the lower lip pouts out. So that is like your facial expressions of sadness. Anger, which is a strong, uncomfortable feeling of hostility in response to provocation, hurt, or threat. The eyebrows are lowered and drawn together. There are vertical lines between your eyebrows. The lower lip is tensed. Your eyes are hard, stare, and bulging. Lips can be pressed together firm with the corners down or in a square shape. Nostrils are usually dilated or flared, and the jaw juts out. Happiness, which is a positive or pleasant feeling. The corners of the lips are drawn back and up. The mouth may or may not be exposed. So having teeth exposed is not necessarily a sign of true, genuine happiness, but it could be it, um, just smiling in general. Like you can tell by the strength of the facial expressions. So the cheeks are raised, eyelids, they can show wrinkles or be tense, and there's a crow's foot around the outside of the eyes. Contempt, which is an interesting emotion, it's a sign of hate or a pattern of behavior or attitudes towards individuals or groups that could show distrust or anger. One side of the mouth is usually raised. It's not a it's not a the facial expression isn't the same on both sides. With fear, eyebrows are raised and drawn together, usually in a flat line. Wrinkles in the forehead are in the center and between the eyebrows, not across. The upper eyelid is raised, but the lower eyelid is tense and drawn up. Eyes have the upper white showing, but not the lower white showing. The mouth is open, lips are slightly tensed, and they're stretched and drawn back. And disgust. So upper lip is raised, upper teeth may be exposed, the nose is wrinkled, and your cheeks are raised. I'm going to try to get through some of these quickly. Surprise, or being startled or of an unexpected event. The eyebrows are raised and curved. The skin below the brow is stretched. Horizontal wrinkles across the forehead. Eyelids are closed. The white of the eyes is showing above and below. And the jaw drops and teeth are parted, but it's not tense and there's no stretching of the mouth. It's very natural. So we're going to talk real quick about building trust. As we talked about earlier, trust is a very strong emotion, but I'm gonna dispel a rumor here. With social engineering, it's not trying to get the person to trust you, your target, right? It's trying to get your target feel like you trust them. That is the secret. When somebody feels trusted and wanted, they are relaxed. But again, do not misconceive the idea that it is manipulation, right? We want to inspire people to trust us. So this is the chemical formula, oxytocin, again, known as the moral molecule or the cuddle hormone. It's for intimacy, trust, and healthy relationship building. Again, for sex, childbirth, and breastfeeding, we release oxytocin. This is our vulnerability. This is what makes us happy and comfortable. If somebody is able to exploit this and make you release these hormones or the trust molecule, it can actually spell danger. And it's very, very scary because I recognize when I'm releasing it. And it's very scary how often it is that I release it. When you get into an argument with somebody, for example, and they want to apologize to you, you immediately feel sorry too. Like you're releasing these good hormones, right? When somebody comes up to me asking me for a favor or wanting something from me or asking for advice, and they're seeking my counsel, I'm immediately guard down 100% most of the time. We're going to talk about building rapport. So the ability to build a relationship with somebody is building rapport, not report. People like to feel helpful and right. Emphasis on right. Communication has to be open and honest, and building healthy relationships on a foundation of trust. So authority is always used as last, as a backup, because that cannot be used first. You don't want to ruin that relationship. So use situational context. Maybe authority might be necessary, but when wanting to build that relationship, you have to make sure the person feels that they're helpful. Nobody likes to feel like they're wrong, so don't ever make somebody feel like they're wrong, and be open and honest. So the steps to building rapport. So you have to establish time constraints, right? Like tell somebody like, hey, this is only going to take a moment, or sorry to bother you, it won't take long. If somebody knows a time constraint, how long they're going to interact with you, it's easier for them. Accommodate nonverbals, which is body language. Use RSVP, which is rhythm, speed, volume, and pitch. Express sympathy or assistance. So like asking for help. People love to be helpful. They love to help other people. So if you're asking somebody for help or assistance, they're almost always going to help you. Nobody's going to turn you down unless they really just don't like you. In that case, the relationship's already broken. Validate or ego suppression is the next one. So this could be hard for some people, but suppress your ego. You do not want to be an egotistic person. You're neutral, right? The other person is right. Validate them is the next step. You don't have to agree with somebody, but validate the way that they feel. If you don't agree on a political view with somebody, but you can validate that the way that they feel is not wrong, they will trust you. Ask things like how, when, and why. It encourages answers beyond yes and no. Try to avoid yes no questions. Get more wordy questions or more wordy answers out of them. Connect quid pro quo. So giving info and getting info. Giving a gift, getting a gift. Reciprocal altruism, which is again, a gift can be a job, it can be physical, a secret, or advice, and then managing expectations. So with that, don't focus on yourself and what you want. Focus on what the target wants, and they will almost always give it to you. If you focus too hard on what you want and your goal, you might not get it. We achieve our results finally with validation. So being non-judgmental validation, right? So strengths, actions, attributes. Never ever lie, ever. And if you are going to lie, it better be a damn good pretext, because if you get caught lying, the relationship is immediately terminated. They won't trust you. Understand what's important to your target, right? Know what they like and what they want, and validate it. Validation is not agreement. It's just telling them that they are not wrong. Nobody likes to be wrong. Ask their thoughts and opinions about the context, right? And then, so if you want, let them explain how they feel, then tell them how you feel, and ask them about how they feel about what your opinion is, and they'll usually give it in a more calm nature. And then the last thing is empowering them with choice. Give them the option. Don't ever rob them of that. Empowerment is a big thing. Nobody likes to be told what to do. I just wrote up a simple little exploit code. It's crappy, but it's just there for presentation purposes. But get the OSINT done, perform your OSINT, know about your target, form the pretext, ego suppression, approach somebody, get close, validate them, distract them, talk in their terms, and then exploit or plant what you're trying to get from them. So with that, that's the end of the talk. Here are some helpful references right here. I drew from these. These guys are all awesome people. I got to hear all of them talk at the Human Hacking Conference. They're amazing, amazing people. You can look up Joe Navarro's books. Robin Dreek has a ton of videos online. These guys are all great. Chris Hadnagy is in charge of socialengineer.org. Check out his website. There is so much information that is out there now these days. And here are some of my websites. So Quadrant Information Security is the company that I work for. Check us out. And then Mighty Pen is, my own personal website and how I do my own contracted pen testing. So yeah, that's it. That's my talk.
And we're back. That was fascinating. I hope my face is conveying how fascinating I found your talk just now.
Thank you. It was a lot to cover, a lot. I was rushing through some of it.
No, I understand. And as somebody that's also been a presenter in the past, I can completely empathize with that. Now, there was an interesting observation that I saw in the Matrix chat. And as a reminder to all of our viewers, the only way you can get in the chat is to be an attendee of Hope. They mentioned that a lot of negative body language aspects that you mentioned are things that happen when someone is cold, physically cold.
Yep. Discomfort, really. So when you're talking about body language, right? Don't, and this is really important with lying and lie detection, right? You're not trying to see if somebody's lying or somebody's telling the truth. You're looking to see if they're comfortable or if they're discomfortable. If they're comfortable, they're gonna display body language of comfort, relaxing. But if they're not comfortable, and it could be the temperature, it could be what you're talking about, it could just be they're thinking about something else, they're going to just show a form of discomfort.
Uh, Now, there was discussion about propaganda in earlier talks at the conference, and how it affects the individual. Now, social engineering does have some commonalities with propaganda. Where do you see those two modes overlapping, and where do they or can they not?
I'm so glad you brought that up. With propaganda, there's a Darknet Diaries episode that came out. I don't remember what episode it is, but it talks about social engineering and about this service member that was part of the propaganda unit. And when he got out of the propaganda unit, he went into public relations, which is the civilian version of propaganda, right? So social engineering and propaganda is super, super important. You're trying to convince people why you are good. Why is the government, why should you follow the government? Why is the United States the greatest country on earth? Why is this company better than this company? Why should you choose? It's all propaganda and social engineering, and marketing and advertisements are just it's a $1 trillion social engineering industry.
Now, what tips can you give for those of us that are socially inept? I mean, after all, as you mentioned, social engineering does rely on people feeling safe or comfortable. But when your demeanor screams confrontation, how do you handle it? Or how would one handle it?
Right. You say confrontation. I'm assuming you're talking about like discomfort, like you're an introvert and you want to learn how to be an extrovert, right? Like you're trying to want to be a social engineer as an introvert, I'm guessing.
Right.
Yes. Okay. So, social engineering is one of those really, really cool forms of of hacking, right? Like there's ways that you can do like CTFs and stuff with technical hacking, but if you want to get good at social engineering, the best thing you can do is just talk to people, right? And you can feel uncomfortable. It's okay. Just have an interaction with somebody at the coffee shop, right? Not I would not recommend talking to waiters and baristas and stuff because their job is to talk to you. They want to talk to you. Talk to somebody random in a line. You're standing in a line. Engage that person, right? Talk to them. Form a relationship. In the back of your mind, try to create something like I want to extract this information from them. Don't let it be malicious, but just like try to find out where they're from. What do they like? What are their hobbies? See if they'll open up to you, and that way you'll develop a more comfortable approach. Some people are mentally unable to do that, and I get that, but the more you practice something, the better you get at it. It's a muscle by the end of the day.
Now, you mentioned facial features and expressions. Something that comes to my mind are some of the differences in cultural expressions, such as the head shakes that one finds in the subcontinent, or how in the Mediterranean, you often find this movement acting as a no. How much cultural competency would you suggest someone have prior to attempting social engineering?
um if you live in the United States and you engage with people in the United States, facial expressions are generally difficult to culturalize. I guess you could say there are some cultural facial expressions varying, between cultures, but for the most part, the facial expressions are pretty static. Um, I would only say that if you're like pen testing in another country, it can be difficult. You just have to study those things. Again, just interacting with people, reading a book, looking at an article online get you more familiar with that. But for the most part, facial expressions are one of the least worried about cultural things. It's mostly hand gestures and body gestures that we're worried about. That's the real big thing.
Are there any good media, TV shows, movies, books that do a realistic job of representing social engineering concepts or the practice of social engineering, in your opinion?
Honestly, there's quite a lot of material out there to cover for that. I would definitely just look at Robert Cialdini, or not Robert Cialdini's, but Chris Hadnagy's website first of all. Uh, Look up some YouTube videos. There's tons of videos about Robin Dreek, about just social engineering in general, and you could find like TED Talks and stuff about it. But if you poke around, Chris Hadnagy has the Social Engineering podcast. Definitely check that out. The older ones are dated for sure. They sound, but the quality of the ones that are updated now are much better. So definitely.
So we've got time for one last question. How are the normals of physical distance and mask wearing affecting social engineering?
That's an interesting question. When I was looking up last minute pictures for Proximix, I just got a ton of pictures on Google about 6 feet and distancing. So I can say this, with social distancing, we feel different emotions. Me, for example, I feel anxiety about being 6 feet. So I feel anxiety when somebody gets close to me, for example, if they're within that 6 feet distance. But at the same time, I also feel really upset that I can't engage people that I want to engage, or even just random people. I can't let them in my 6 foot bubble, right? So I am on edge, right? I have adapted my mind to tell me that, hey, closer than 6 feet is just too close. But at the same time, my human mind is wanting to invite people into that circle. The social distancing in this whole pandemic really has played a big part on a lot of people having to work from home, socially distance. It's really causing a lot of issues with depression. And I have to say that really is a good question. I'm glad you asked, somebody asked that question. But there's definitely more research that has to be involved with that too. I'm just only scratched the surface of it from the last week when I was looking at it.
We are out of time for this talk. I do want to thank our speaker again, Michael Morgenstern. If you would like to continue this conversation, of course, our Matrix through the Matrix chat, visit the Hallway Conversations room, and we will be back in about 10 minutes with the next talk. Thank you, and we hope to see you again at Hope, hopefully in person in the future.